In the heart of an opulent mansion, where soft, golden lights draped over meticulously manicured gardens and the gentle strains of classical music flowed like a delicate perfume, a night of grandeur was in full swing. The Villanueva Gala, meant to dazzle the wealthy and powerful, held an unexpected storm within its glittering facade. Amidst the splendor, Marta, a humble domestic worker, and her innocent daughter, Luisa, found themselves thrust into a whirlwind of cruelty and prejudice. Yet, out of this darkness, an unexpected figure emerged, turning the night from despair to hope. This is a story of resilience, courage, and the power of family love, a journey from the depths of humiliation to the heights of redemption. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. In the heart of an opulent mansion, the Villanueva Gala was in full swing, a night meant to dazzle the wealthy and powerful. Soft, golden lights draped over the meticulously manicured garden, and the gentle strains of classical music flowed through the air like a delicate perfume. Amidst the grandeur, Marta, a humble domestic worker for the Villanueva family, and her innocent 10-year-old daughter, Luisa, tried to remain inconspicuous. Their presence was tolerated, but they never anticipated the storm that was about to engulf them. The evening took a cruel turn when a group of children playing by the shimmering fountain invited Luisa to join their games. With hope in her eyes, Luisa hesitated for a moment before stepping forward, her small heart yearning for companionship. But her dreams were quickly shattered. Fernando, a privileged boy with a sneer etched on his face, eyed her with disdain. His words, laced with venom, cut through the air like a dagger. "You don't belong here," he spat, his gaze sweeping over her modest attire. "You're nothing like us." Luisa recoiled, tears welling up as the weight of his rejection crushed her spirit. Marta, seeing her daughter's distress, hurried over, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and fury. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice trembling yet firm, though the rage within her threatened to boil over. Before Fernando could respond, his mother, the imperious Mrs. Laura Villanueva, stormed over, her eyes cold and judgmental. "Your daughter is disturbing the other children," she declared, her voice dripping with condescension. "This party is not meant for people of her kind." The words struck Marta like a slap to the face, leaving her breathless with indignation. Fighting to maintain her composure, she retorted, "What exactly do you mean by her kind? Have the courage to say it plainly. My daughter has every right to be here, just like any other child." The tension in the air was suffocating, thick with unspoken prejudices and the weight of centuries-old divides. "Enough," barked Don Alvaro, the patriarch of the Villanueva clan, his voice quaking with authority. "If you're going to cause trouble, you must leave immediately." The entire party fell silent, the music coming to a jarring halt as all eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. The guests, who moments before had been enjoying the evening, now turned their judgmental gazes toward Marta and Luisa, their whispers like 1,000 needles piercing the air. With her heart heavy and her spirit bruised, Marta took Luisa's hand, and together they began the long walk toward the exit, their heads bowed in humiliation. But just as they reached the grand doors of the mansion, an unexpected figure appeared. An elderly man, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his presence commanding and undeniable. It was Don Ramon, a powerful figure in the business world and, unbeknownst to many, the true power behind Don Alvaro. As his sharp eyes took in the scene, the sight of Marta and Luisa's tear-streaked faces brought a dark cloud over his expression. "What is the meaning of this?" he thundered, his voice echoing through the hall, stopping Marta in her tracks. Don Alvaro, suddenly pale, struggled to find words, but they caught in his throat, his authority crumbling under the weight of Don Ramon's icy glare. Sensing the danger, Mrs. Laura Villanueva tried to seize control of the narrative. "These two were causing a scene," she lied, her voice faltering under the intensity of Don Ramon's stare. He looked from Luisa to Marta and then to the Villanuevas, his gaze hard and unyielding. "That girl," he began, his voice like steel, "is my granddaughter." The revelation was a bombshell, detonating with the force of a thunderclap in the silent room. The air seemed to freeze, and every face turned pale with shock and horror. Don Alvaro and his wife exchanged desperate, fearful glances as the guests broke into a flurry of whispers, their shock palpable. The once confident Alvaro now looked like a man on the edge of collapse, his legs trembling beneath him as the full implications of Don Ramon's words sank in. "We need to talk, Alvaro." Now Don Ramon commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Alvaro, quaking with dread, could do nothing but obey, his fate now hanging in the balance. Marta and Luisa, still shaken but now with a spark of hope, stood by, their tears gradually drying as the realization of their new protector's power dawned on them. Don Ramon's revelation had not only shattered the evening but had also irrevocably changed the lives of everyone involved, casting a long shadow over the Villanueva family's future. The room was thick with an oppressive silence as Don Ramon guided Alvaro to a secluded corner of the grand hall. Marta, still clutching Luisa's trembling hand, watched with a mix of apprehension and relief as Alvaro's complexion paled with every passing second. It was as though the weight of his misdeeds was visibly draining the color from his face, leaving him on the brink of collapse. Don Ramon, however, maintained a chilling composure, his voice calm but laced with an unmistakable authority. "Alvaro, you have served me for many years, and never in my worst nightmares did I think you would permit such disgrace to befall my own granddaughter in your home." Alvaro, his throat dry and his heart pounding in his chest, struggled to find his voice. "Don Ramon, I swear, I didn't know Luisa was your granddaughter. If I had known." "Ah, so your behavior hinges on the knowledge of my connections," Don Ramon interjected, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Is it truly necessary to know who someone is before treating them with the basic respect and dignity that every child deserves?" Alvaro had no words, his mouth opened but no sound came out. Nearby, Mrs. Laura Villanueva, desperate to salvage the situation, made a feeble attempt to speak, but Don Ramon's cold, piercing gaze silenced her before she could utter a word. Around them, the murmurs of the guests grew louder, their whispers swirling like a storm as they tried to make sense of the unfolding drama. The tension was palpable, and the air buzzed with unspoken judgments and lingering questions. Sensing the opportunity to address the crowd, Marta stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tumultuous emotions swirling within her. "Let tonight serve as a stark reminder to us all of the respect and humanity that should be afforded to every person, regardless of their background or status." After a moment of heavy silence, Don Ramon returned to the center of the room, this time with Marta and Luisa by his side. The music had long since stopped, leaving an eerie quiet that amplified the gravity of the situation. All eyes were fixed on Don Ramon as he began to speak, his voice resonating with authority. "Tonight has opened our eyes to the stark realities that still plague us. We have witnessed not only a disturbing lack of compassion, but also the unwavering strength of a mother and the bravery of a young girl. Luisa, my granddaughter, has displayed more grace and dignity than many here tonight." He then turned his steely gaze to Alvaro and his wife. "I expect you to reflect deeply on what has transpired and take the necessary steps to make amends, not just through words, but through meaningful actions. My continued support for this family will be reconsidered based on your conduct moving forward." Alvaro, now fully grasping the severity of the situation, nodded solemnly, the weight of his impending actions pressing down on him. "We will take all necessary measures to rectify this, Don Ramon, not merely because of our professional relationship, but because it is the right thing to do." Marta, feeling a mixture of relief and cautious optimism, embraced Luisa, who clung to her mother with a newfound sense of security. The night, which had begun with humiliation and sorrow, was now ending on a note of hope, and the possibility of redemption. However, what Alvaro, Laura, and the others who had scorned little Luisa didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of a reckoning. Their lives, previously filled with luxury, excess, and a disdainful disregard for those they deemed beneath them, were about to be upended by a series of unforeseen events that not even the sharpest minds could have predicted. If you found this story compelling, I would be deeply honored and grateful for your support. By simply subscribing, you would be helping me immensely in my mission to continue bringing you the best and most heartfelt stories. Thank you in advance, and may many blessings come your way. The following morning, Alvaro sat in his study, his mind racing as he attempted to devise a way to reclaim his power and prestige. The public dressing down by Don Ramon had struck a devastating blow to his pride, leaving his authority and position teetering on the edge. In a fit of desperation, he summoned an emergency meeting with his most trusted advisors, a group handpicked for their unwavering loyalty and ruthless cunning. "We need a plan to take control of this situation," Alvaro barked, his voice taut with anxiety as he slammed his fist onto the table, the sound reverberating through the room. "I refuse to let Don Ramon dictate how we run our affairs, be it family or business." Laura, fanning the flames of conspiracy, leaned in and suggested with a sly smile, "What if we dig up something on Don Ramon? Something so damning that he wouldn't dare interfere in our lives again." One of the advisors, a man known for his sharp wit and calculating nature, proposed cautiously, "We could discreetly investigate his past. Everyone has skeletons in their closet, even someone as powerful as Don Ramon." The idea, though repugnant, stirred a dark excitement in Alvaro. He nodded, a wicked determination glinting in his eyes. "Do it. Uncover whatever dirt you can find. I will not allow this incident to be the downfall of our influence and legacy." Thus began a sinister plot, one that would plunge Alvaro and his inner circle into a web of deceit and retribution, with consequences far beyond what any of them could have imagined. Meanwhile, Marta was determined to turn the previous night's ordeal into a powerful catalyst for change, knowing full well that Alvaro would likely attempt to sabotage her efforts. Recognizing the importance of strategic alliances, she swiftly convened a meeting with influential community members, potential allies, and sponsors. The atmosphere in the room was charged with anticipation as Marta began to speak, her voice steady yet impassioned. "This foundation is not merely a reaction to the humiliation we faced," Marta declared, her gaze sweeping across the faces of those assembled. "It represents a profound, long-term commitment to transforming our community's understanding of discrimination and exclusion. This is about more than a single night, it's about creating lasting change." One of the attendees, a prominent businessman with considerable influence, leaned forward, intrigued by her conviction. "How do you intend to ensure that this foundation has the impact you promise, especially if you encounter resistance?" Marta's response was firm, her words resonating with a clear sense of purpose. "We will rely on transparency, accountability, and collaboration. Our goal is not to create adversaries, but to build bridges within our community. However, let it be known that we are resolute in defending our principles. We will not be deterred by opposition, no matter where it comes from." Her unwavering resolve struck a chord with many in the room, and she could sense the tide of support beginning to swell in her favor. Yet, even as Marta solidified her position, Alvaro, with Laura's covert backing, had set his own machinations into motion. The decision had been made. A private investigator was hired to delve into Don Ramon's past, scouring for any blemish, any misstep that could be wielded as a weapon against him. Weeks passed, and the investigator finally summoned Alvaro and Laura to a clandestine meeting under the cover of night. The air was thick with tension as they gathered in a dimly lit room, where the investigator spread out a series of documents and photographs before them. "I've uncovered something that might be of interest to you," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, pointing to a series of old financial transactions and questionable associations that dated back decades. It's not recent, but it could be enough to cast doubt on Don Ramon's integrity if brought to light. Alvaro's eyes gleamed with the prospect of reclaiming his power. He studied the documents with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, already plotting how to leverage this information to his advantage. But before he could finalize his plans, Marta received an anonymous call that afternoon, alerting her to Alvaro's intentions. The news was unsettling, but not entirely unexpected. Marta immediately contacted Don Ramon, who listened intently, his expression grim but composed. "Thank you for the warning," Marta, Don Ramon said, his voice calm yet steely. "I suspected Alvaro might resort to such tactics. We must act swiftly to protect both my reputation and the Foundation's integrity." In a decisive move, they planned a press conference, intending to take control of the narrative before Alvaro could strike. The strategy was to preempt any leaks by revealing the existence of the investigation themselves, framing it as a demonstration of Don Ramon's transparency and commitment to accountability. The goal was to neutralize Alvaro's scheme by turning it into an opportunity to reinforce public trust. As the day of the press conference arrived, journalists, community leaders, and curious onlookers filled the auditorium, buzzing with speculation about the sudden urgency of the event. The tension in the room was palpable as they awaited Don Ramon's address. When Don Ramon finally took the stage, flanked by Marta and Luisa, the room fell silent. He spoke with the calm authority of a man who had nothing to hide. "Ladies and gentlemen, recent events have compelled us to address certain matters publicly. There have been attempts to tarnish my name and, by extension, the work we are committed to through this foundation, rather than allow such efforts to undermine our mission. I have chosen to confront them head-on." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Yes, an investigation into my past has been conducted, and while the findings may raise questions, I stand before you today to reaffirm my dedication to transparency and responsibility. Our foundation is built on the principles of justice and equality, and we will not be swayed by those who seek to disrupt our work." Marta then stepped forward, her voice resonating with conviction. "This foundation was born out of a deep need for change, and that change will not be derailed by baseless accusations or fear-mongering. We are here to ensure that every individual in our community is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The room erupted into a wave of applause, the audience clearly moved by their words. The press conference had successfully turned the tables, transforming what could have been a damaging scandal into a powerful statement of integrity and resilience. Alvaro, who had been watching the press conference from the shadows, felt a cold dread settle in his chest. His plan to undermine Don Ramon had backfired spectacularly, leaving him to contemplate the consequences of his failed gambit. The path ahead was now fraught with uncertainty, as the very foundation of his influence began to crumble beneath him. Don Ramon stood resolutely in front of the microphones, his serene demeanor masking the turbulence within. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady and authoritative. "I want to thank you for coming here today, as this moment is critical. Recently, rumors have begun to circulate, casting doubts on my integrity and questioning my past. I want to address these directly and transparently." As he spoke, Don Ramon meticulously outlined the financial transactions and associations that Alvaro had likely planned to use against him. He explained each decision with a clarity that left no room for ambiguity, his calm delivery lending weight to his words. "Each choice I made was done with the best judgment available to me at the time. I take full responsibility for all my actions, both commendable and questionable." The room fell into a profound silence as everyone absorbed the unexpected candor of Don Ramon's confession. Behind him, Marta observed the crowd, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of their reaction. Meanwhile, Alvaro, who was watching the live broadcast, slammed his fist onto the table in a fit of rage. His carefully laid plan to destabilize Don Ramon was unraveling before his eyes. "This old man is more cunning than I anticipated," Alvaro muttered, his frustration evident. Laura, ever the strategist, approached him, her voice soothing yet firm. "We can still turn this around to our advantage. We need to cast doubt on his sincerity and focus on the details he conveniently left out." Alvaro's mind raced as he nodded, quickly formulating his next move. "Prepare a statement for the press," he instructed. "We'll question his credibility. If he wants to play this game publicly, we'll make sure the public scrutinizes every word of his so-called transparency." The conflict was far from over, and Alvaro was determined to escalate the battle. He quickly organized an emergency meeting with his closest advisors and public relations team to craft a counterattack. In the opulent boardroom of his company, Alvaro addressed his team with a mix of urgency and calculated precision. "Don Ramon is trying to present himself as an open book," Alvaro began, his voice laced with contempt. "But even the most transparent books can hide secrets within their pages. We need the public to start questioning what he didn't say, what was conveniently omitted from his story." Laura, always quick to support her husband's tactics, suggested with a sharp edge, "We should imply that Don Ramon's so-called transparency is just a well-crafted facade. What if we suggest there's much more he hasn't revealed?" One of the advisors, known for his expertise in crisis management, proposed a bolder approach. "We could find someone from his past who can testify against him. It doesn't have to be concrete evidence, just enough to plant the seed of doubt." Alvaro's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Excellent," he agreed. "Laura, coordinate with the PR team. I want this narrative in the headlines tomorrow. Let's make people wonder if they really know the true Don Ramon." With their strategy in place, the team sprang into action, preparing a series of carefully crafted statements and strategic leaks to the media, all designed to erode public confidence in Don Ramon. "I have someone in mind who could help us change the game," Alvaro mentioned ominously, already considering his next steps. While Alvaro and Laura plotted, Marta, fully aware of the escalating conflict, took measures to fortify her position. She convened a meeting with her most trusted allies and legal advisors, aware that Alvaro's determination to bring down Don Ramon was relentless. "We must be prepared for any eventuality," Marta told her team. "Our responsibility is to protect not only Don Ramon but also the integrity of our mission. We cannot afford to be caught off guard." Luisa, though still young, felt the weight of the conflict pressing upon her. Inspired by her mother's resolve, she expressed a desire to become more involved in the struggle. "Mom, I want to help," Luisa said earnestly. "Maybe I could speak at the next public meeting, show everyone that the foundation is genuinely making a difference." Marta's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's bravery. "Of course, Luisa, your voice is just as powerful as anyone's. Together we can face anything Alvaro throws at us." As Luisa prepared to take on a more visible role in the foundation, Marta focused on strengthening her alliances. The foundation was becoming a symbol of hope and resilience, but the storm brewing around them threatened to challenge their unity and strength in ways they had never anticipated. The tension within Don Ramon's company reached a boiling point as Marta, after days of relentless investigation and sleepless nights, unearthed a dark secret that had long festered beneath the surface, a secret that explained the bitterness and resentment she had harbored toward Don Ramon for years. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation, and Marta knew that how she chose to handle this newfound knowledge could determine the outcome of the battle ahead. Would she use it to confront Don Ramon, potentially shattering the fragile alliance they had built? Or would she find a way to turn this secret into a force for healing and reconciliation? The choices she made in the coming days would shape not only her own fate, but the future of everyone involved in this intricate power struggle. In a tense meeting with the top executives, Marta decided the time had come to confront Don Ramon in front of everyone. "Don Ramon, it's time for the truth to finally be revealed," Marta declared, her voice steady but laced with suppressed emotion. Don Ramon, who had been anticipating this moment, gave a somber nod, a look of resignation on his face. "You're right, Marta. The time has come for everyone to learn what truly happened." With a deep breath, Marta began to unveil the truth. Years ago, Don Ramon had made financial and personal choices that, while not illegal, had deeply wounded Marta's mother, leading to a rift that tore their family apart. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room, leaving the executives in stunned silence as the atmosphere grew thick with tension and unease. "I made the decisions I believed were right at the time," Don Ramon confessed, his voice carrying a weight of regret that he had never before shown. "But now I see the pain those decisions caused. Marta, I never intended for you to suffer because of my mistakes." Don Ramon's public admission left the boardroom in a heavy silence. Marta, though deeply moved by his genuine remorse, knew this was just the first step on a long road toward reconciliation. "It's not just me you owe an apology to," Don Ramon, Marta responded, her voice soft yet resolute. "There are many others who have been affected by your actions. But today, I'm willing to work with you to begin mending the damage that's been done." As the relationship between Marta and Don Ramon began the fragile process of healing, a new conflict emerged when Marta took on a role at Don Ramon's company. The employees, who were used to the established order, were resistant to her presence and authority. Subordinates blatantly ignored her directives, while her superiors burdened her with unrealistic demands. "We need results, Marta. We don't have the luxury of time," one of the department heads remarked, his tone dripping with condescension. Marta, maintaining her composure, responded with quiet strength. "The results will come when everyone in this company learns to collaborate and respect leadership, no matter where it originates." Despite her efforts, the resistance within the company grew, and Marta found herself battling on multiple fronts. One particularly draining afternoon, overwhelmed and disheartened, she confronted Don Ramon in his office. "I can't keep going like this, Ramon," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her frustration. "If you don't change the culture of this company, they're going to destroy not just me, but you and everything you've worked to build." Don Ramon, seeing the toll the struggle was taking on Marta, vowed to support her fully. "You're right, Marta," he said, his tone resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes to turn things around. I won't let them tear you down or destroy our family." But just as they began to make progress, Don Ramon's company was blindsided by an unexpected crisis. A series of reckless decisions made by corrupt executives who had since been dismissed had brought the company to the brink of bankruptcy. The news leaked to the press, and the business community watched with a mixture of morbid curiosity and anticipation, eager to see how the drama would unfold. In an emergency meeting, Don Ramon, Marta, and the company's top leaders gathered around a conference table, their faces etched with worry and determination. "We have to act swiftly if we want to save this company," Don Ramon said, his voice tense yet resolute. Marta, poring over the financial documents spread before her, identified the most critical areas. "We need to implement an immediate restructuring plan," she stated, "but more importantly, we need to unite as a team. Without cooperation, everything we do will be for nothing." The internal resistance persisted, but the severity of the situation forced some to reconsider their positions. Still, one of the most powerful department heads, Joaquin, openly voiced his skepticism. "Why should we follow you?" Marta, Joaquin challenged, his tone full of disdain. "You don't have the experience to manage a crisis of this scale." Meeting Joaquin's gaze with unwavering resolve, Marta replied with newfound firmness, "I may not have the years of experience you're looking for, but I have the determination and the backing of Don Ramon. More importantly, I have the will to do whatever it takes to save this company and protect the livelihoods of thousands of employees." Her words hung in the air, carrying the weight of her conviction. The battle ahead was daunting, but Marta knew that with courage, determination, and unity, they could overcome even the most formidable challenges. Don Ramon stepped in decisively, backing Marta with unwavering support. Joaquin, if you find it impossible to work under Marta's leadership, then perhaps it's time you reconsider your place in this company. This crisis demands all of us to be united, and there is no space for doubt or division. His words left no room for misinterpretation. Loyalty and collaboration were now non-negotiable. The atmosphere within the company was thick with pressure and tension, but the leadership was resolute in facing the crisis with courage and solidarity. Marta and Don Ramon threw themselves into the daunting task of executing the restructuring plan. Days blurred into weeks as they worked tirelessly, each decision carrying immense weight. The initial reluctance among the employees began to wane as they witnessed Marta's relentless dedication and personal sacrifice. Slowly, attitudes began to shift, and a fragile sense of trust started to build. However, just as progress seemed within reach, an unforeseen blow struck. The business crisis took a darker turn as betrayals within Don Ramon's inner circle came to light. Anonymous documents and emails began to surface, revealing that several of the most trusted executives were secretly working to undermine the restructuring efforts. One afternoon, as Marta was going through the day's reports, an anonymous email landed in her inbox. With a sense of foreboding, she opened it to find incriminating evidence against several top executives. Her heart pounded as she realized the depth of the treachery. Without hesitation, she took the evidence to Don Ramon. "Look at this," Ramon, Marta said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "We're not just battling an external crisis, we have enemies within our own ranks." Don Ramon, as he reviewed the damning evidence, felt a surge of betrayal and fury. "I can't believe this. These people have been by my side for years." The gravity of the situation was clear, and they knew immediate action was required. An urgent meeting was called, summoning the accused executives to the boardroom. The tension in the room was palpable, every glance charged with suspicion and unease. "We have strong evidence that some of you have been actively working against the interests of this company," Don Ramon began, his voice stern and unyielding. "This behavior is utterly unacceptable." Manuel, one of the accused, tried to defend himself, his voice shaky. "This is all a misunderstanding. There's no betrayal here, just miscommunications and poor decisions." Marta, holding the damning documents in her hand, wasn't swayed. She confronted Manuel with steely resolve. "These emails are not misunderstandings, Manuel. They are clear evidence of a calculated betrayal. How do you justify this?" The room fell into an oppressive silence as the accused struggled to provide convincing answers. Realizing the severity of the situation, Don Ramon made a drastic but necessary decision. Manuel and all those involved are dismissed from their positions effective immediately. I will not allow these betrayals to dismantle everything we have worked so hard to build. The news of the mass dismissals spread rapidly through the company, creating a whirlwind of relief and fear among the employees. Meanwhile, Marta and Don Ramon understood that the battle was far from over. With the traitors removed, the company began to stabilize, albeit slowly. Marta took on an even more assertive role, proving her capability to lead with determination and strength. But Marta's rise did not go unnoticed by Alvaro, who perceived her growing influence as a direct threat to his own power. Consumed with anger over the recent developments, Alvaro convened a secret meeting at his mansion with Laura and his closest confidants. "We cannot allow Marta and Don Ramon to win this battle," Alvaro declared, his voice seething with barely contained rage. "If they continue on this path, we stand to lose everything we've built." Laura, ever the strategist, leaned in with a calculating look in her eyes. "We need to strike in a way that will leave them reeling, something that will utterly destroy their credibility. We could use Marta's story against her, twist it to paint her as incompetent and dishonest. that would weaken their position significantly. Alvaro nodded, a sinister plan already beginning to take shape in his mind. Yes, we'll find a way to turn the tide. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. As the forces aligned against them, Marta and Don Ramon prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that the coming days would test their resilience and their bond like never before. The stakes were higher than ever, and the lines between allies and enemies had never been more blurred. Alvaro nodded, a sinister smile forming on his lips. Perfect. Let's organize a social event, a sort of trap, where we can humiliate Marta. If we manage to expose any weakness, her fall will be inevitable. Alvaro's wife, using her network of contacts, organized a luxurious charity event. Marta was invited as the keynote speaker, unaware that it was a carefully planned trap. On the night of the event, Marta arrived with Luisa, both dressed elegantly and ready to represent the foundation. As she made her way to the stage for her speech, Alvaro and Laura waited for the right moment. During the speech, Laura abruptly interrupted, pretending there was an emergency. "Excuse me, but before we continue, I think it's important that everyone knows the truth about Marta," said Laura, holding an envelope full of falsified documents. The audience fell silent, expectant. Laura began reading, distorting facts and sowing doubts about Marta's integrity. "Here is evidence that Marta has manipulated foundation funds for personal gain." Marta, surprised but remaining calm, approached Laura. "This is a lie. All the funds are audited and transparent. This is a vile accusation without basis." However, the seed of doubt had been planted. The murmurs grew, and some attendees began to leave, distrustful. "This won't end here," Alvaro said. Marta, confronting Alvaro with fire in her eyes. "I won't allow you to destroy my reputation or that of the foundation with your lies." Alvaro smiled disdainfully. "We'll see how long you can stand, Marta. This is just the beginning." What is your opinion of what our characters have done so far? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. If the story is interesting to you, I would be very honored to receive your support. Simply subscribing would help me a lot to continue bringing you the best stories. Thank you again, and I wish many blessings for you. Now, let's continue with the story, because the best is yet to come. Marta and Luisa, though shaken by the ambush, left the event with their heads held high, ready to fight against the lies and restore the truth. The day after the charity event, newspapers and social media were filled with sensational headlines about the accusations against Marta. The reputation of the foundation and Marta herself was in jeopardy. At Don Ramon's house, Marta, Luisa, and Don Ramon gathered to discuss the next steps. Marta, her eyes red from exhaustion and frustration, looked at Don Ramon and Luisa. "We can't let these lies destroy us. We have to act quickly to clear our name." Don Ramon, though worried, showed his unconditional support. "Marta, we've faced crises before, and we'll do it again, but we need a clear strategy." Luisa, with a determination unusual for her age, intervened. "Let's use social media to tell our truth, show all the evidence of the foundation's transparency, and expose Alvaro and Laura's lies." Marta nodded, seeing the logic in her daughter's words. "You're right, Luisa. We can't just rely on traditional media. We need to reach people directly." Marta and her team immediately got to work, gathering all the necessary evidence to prove the foundation's transparency. They decided to do a live broadcast where Marta and Luisa would speak directly to the public, exposing the lies and presenting irrefutable evidence. On the night of the broadcast, Marta and Luisa sat in front of the camera, surrounded by documents and charts that demonstrated the accuracy of their management. The tension was palpable, but the determination in their faces was unwavering. "Good evening," Marta began, her voice firm. "Today I want to speak to you directly, without intermediaries. The accusations made against us are completely false, and we are here to prove it." Luisa took the floor, showing charts and documents. "Here are the complete audits of the last few years, every donation, every expense. Everything is documented and transparent. We have nothing to hide." As they spoke, comments on social media began to shift. People who initially doubted began to see the truth behind the accusations. But the moment of greatest tension came when Marta decided to confront Alvaro and Laura directly. "Alvaro, Laura, I know you're watching this. You know that everything you've said is a lie, and I won't rest until justice is done. You will have to face the consequences of your actions." The live broadcast was a success, and support began to return slowly. However, Marta knew the fight was far from over. Alvaro and Laura would not stop so easily. With the live broadcast gaining traction and changing public perception, Alvaro and Laura realized their plan was beginning to crumble. They decided to take drastic measures. They called a secret meeting with some of the employees fired by Don Ramon, offering rewards in exchange for false testimonies that could further harm Marta and the foundation. In a dark room, Alvaro addressed the group. "We need you to testify against Marta, say she manipulated funds and abused her power. If you cooperate, there will be benefits for all of you." One of the former employees, a man named Ricardo, hesitated. "This is very risky." "If we're found out, the consequences will be severe," Laura, with a cold smile, replied. "Don't worry, we have contacts who can ensure your testimonies are taken seriously. Besides, think of what you'll gain." Ricardo and the others agreed, and the plan was set in motion. However, one of the employees, Carla, fearful of the repercussions, decided to contact Marta in secret. Marta received an anonymous call while in her office reviewing documents. The voice on the other end of the phone was low and nervous. "Marta, it's Carla, one of those fired by Don Ramon. I need to talk to you." "There's something you need to know." Marta, intrigued and a bit scared, agreed to meet Carla in a nearby park. Upon arrival, she saw Carla sitting on a bench, visibly nervous. "Thank you for coming, Marta. I can't go through with this. Alvaro and Laura are planning to use false testimonies to bring you down. They offered money to several of us to lie about you and the foundation." Marta felt a mix of relief and anger. "Carla, are you willing to testify against them? We need evidence to dismantle their plan." Carla nodded, though visibly scared. "Yes, I'm willing. I can't keep letting these lies destroy lives." Marta and Carla devised a plan to record a confession and present it as evidence. The tension was high, and any mistake could be catastrophic. They decided to set up a fake meeting with Alvaro, where Carla would wear a hidden microphone. The meeting took place in a discreet restaurant. Carla, nervous but determined, met with Alvaro, who suspected nothing. During the conversation, Carla managed to get Alvaro to admit his manipulation plan. "All you have to do is follow the script. We'll take care of the rest," Alvaro said, unaware that every word was being recorded. That same night, Marta and Carla took the recording to Don Ramon, who, upon hearing it, decided it was time to act. "This is enough to destroy them, Marta. We're going to take this to the authorities and clear your name once and for all." The revelation of the betrayal and the new twist in events added a layer of intrigue and danger to the already tense situation. Marta knew the battle was far from over, but now she had a crucial advantage. With the recording in hand, Don Ramon and Carla went to the authorities to present the evidence of Alvaro and Laura's conspiracy. The prosecutor's office was bustling with activity, but the prosecutor, intrigued by the case, received them immediately. "This is very serious," said the prosecutor, listening to the recording. "We can use this evidence to open a formal investigation against Alvaro and Laura." Marta, grateful, replied, "We don't just want justice for ourselves, but for all those who have been manipulated and harmed by them." Meanwhile, at Alvaro's mansion, the atmosphere was tense. Laura, aware that her plan might fail, was paranoid. An unexpected call from the prosecutor confirmed her worst fears. "Mr. Alvaro, Mrs. Laura, we are opening an official investigation into the accusations against you. I advise you to prepare to cooperate." Alvaro hung up the phone, his face pale with fury. "This can't be happening. We need a strategy, and fast." In court, tensions reached their peak. Marta and Don Ramon, accompanied by their legal team, sat across from Alvaro and Laura, who were trying to maintain their composure. Carla's recording was played before the court, and the silence in the room was deafening. It's clear that Alvaro and Laura tried to manipulate the truth and damage the reputations of Marta, and Don Ramon declared the prosecutor, his voice echoing in the room. "This cannot be tolerated in our society." Alvaro, desperate, tried one last move. "This is a setup. Everything was manipulated," he shouted, pointing at Marta and Don Ramon. The judge, unperturbed, responded, "Mr. Alvaro, the evidence presented is conclusive. You will have to face the consequences of your actions." With the evidence stacked against them, the verdict was swift and decisive. Alvaro and Laura were found guilty of conspiracy and defamation, and the sentence included significant compensation for Marta and the foundation, as well as a prison term. With Alvaro and Laura out of the picture, attention returned to Marta and Don Ramon. The community, seeing the injustice they had faced, rallied in support. The foundation began to receive donations and volunteers like never before. During a meeting with the foundation's board, Marta expressed her gratitude and renewed vision. "We've been through a lot, but this has only made us stronger. Now, more than ever, we must focus on our mission of inclusion and justice." Luisa, who had been a silent but constant force throughout the process, took the floor. "Mom, I'm so proud of you and all of us. We've shown that truth and justice always prevail." Don Ramon, emotional, added Marta, "Luisa, what we've achieved together is extraordinary. But this is just the beginning. We have a bright future ahead, full of possibilities." The room filled with applause and optimism. The foundation, revitalized, became a symbol of resilience and hope for the community. Although Alvaro and Laura were behind bars, the echo of their vengeance had not ended. One of Alvaro's associates, a dark and vengeful man named Ricardo, swore to avenge his friend's downfall. He knew the weaknesses of Don Ramon and Marta and was determined to use that information against them. One night, Marta received an anonymous call. "Be careful. Not all enemies have been defeated," said a somber voice before abruptly hanging up. Marta, worried, met with Don Ramon and Luisa to discuss the threat. "We can't let our guard down. We have to be prepared for anything," said Marta, her face reflecting the tension. The afternoon began like any other. Marta, busy in the foundation's office, was reviewing financial reports when she received a call from Luisa's school. The voice on the other end was tense and worried. "Mrs. Marta, Luisa has not been picked up by her usual transportation, and she is not at the school. We tried calling her, but she isn't answering." Marta's heart stopped for a moment. Without wasting a second, she called Don Ramon, who immediately activated his private security contacts and the police. Meanwhile, Marta received a text message from an unknown number. "If you want to see your daughter again, drop all charges against Alvaro and Laura." The message was clear and terrifying. Marta felt a mix of fear and anger. She knew she couldn't give in to the blackmail, but she also knew that every minute counted. She showed the message to Don Ramon, who frowned as he read it. "This is the work of someone desperate," said Don Ramon, his voice full of concern. "We can't let them get away with it." At Don Ramon's mansion, the tension was palpable. Marta paced back and forth, unable to stay still. The police arrived quickly, but so did Don Ramon's private security team, led by a man named Miguel, an expert in crisis situations. "We will find Luisa, Mrs." Marta said, Miguel with determination. "We have some leads and are tracking the origin of the message." Marta, though grateful, couldn't contain her anxiety. Her mind was filled with terrifying images of what could be happening to Luisa. She couldn't afford to lose hope, but every second without news was torture. "Miguel, please find her." I don't know what I'll do if something happens to her, said Marta, her voice breaking. Meanwhile, in an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Luisa was being held by Ricardo. He watched her, confident that his plan would work, but Luisa, though terrified, remained calm, remembering her mother's teachings about being strong in difficult moments. Don't try anything stupid, girl. All this will be over soon if your mother does as she's told, Ricardo said coldly. Marta was on the brink of despair. With the ransom message in mind, she moved frantically through the mansion, looking for any information that could lead her to her daughter. Don Ramon was on the phone, talking rapidly with his contacts, while Miguel's security team prepared an action plan. We've traced the signal from the message. It seems to be coming from an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Miguel reported, entering the room with a map. We need to act fast. Let's go, Marta said decisively. I'm not going to wait here while my daughter is in danger. Don Ramon approached Marta, placing a hand on her shoulder. Marta, let the professionals handle this. I don't want you to put yourself in danger. It's my daughter, Ramon. I won't sit here. I'm going with you without further discussion, Marta. Don Ramon and Miguel got into a black SUV, accompanied by several members of the security team. The drive to the warehouse was tense and silent, with Marta looking out the window, her mind full of worries and fears. Meanwhile, at the warehouse, Luisa was sitting in a dark corner, her hands tied. Ricardo watched her closely, confident that his plan would work. But Luisa, though scared, kept the hope that her mother would come for her. Your mother won't take long to give in. All this will be over soon, Ricardo said, his voice full of disdain. My mom never gives up, Luisa responded with bravery. She will come for me, and you'll regret doing this. Ricardo laughed, but there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes. He knew that Marta and Don Ramon were not ordinary people, and underestimating them could be a fatal mistake. Upon arriving at the warehouse, Miguel deployed his team around the building. Every second counted, and the tension in the air was palpable. Marta and Don Ramon stayed close to the vehicle, watching as the security team prepared to enter. Miguel, make sure nothing happens to Luisa, said Marta, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. I promise, Mrs. Marta. We will enter and exit quickly with a signal. The security team stormed the warehouse, moving with precision and stealth. Marta and Don Ramon waited outside, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, they heard the sounds of struggle and shouting from inside. Adrenaline coursed through their veins. Suddenly, Miguel emerged from the warehouse, carrying Luisa in his arms. Marta ran towards them, tears of relief streaming down her face. Luisa, Marta cried, hugging her daughter tightly. I'm here, sweetheart. Everything is okay now. Luisa, still trembling, clung to her mother. I knew you would come for me, Mom. I knew you would. Don Ramon joined the embrace, his eyes filled with tears. We're together now. No one will hurt us again. The nightmare was over, but Marta knew that the repercussions of this act of revenge were far from disappearing. Luisa's rescue brought a brief respite to Marta and her family, but the repercussions of the kidnapping began to unfold quickly. The news leaked to the media, and immediately Don Ramon's mansion was surrounded by journalists and cameras. Marta, exhausted but determined, prepared to face this new storm. Don Ramon organized a press conference in the main hall of his mansion. The room was packed with journalists eager for details. Marta stood in front of the microphone, with Luisa by her side, showing impressive bravery. Today we face one of the darkest moments of our lives, Marta began, her voice firm, though charged with emotion. My daughter was kidnapped in an attempt to intimidate us and force us to drop charges against Alvaro and Laura. We will not give in to these cowardly acts. A murmur spread through the room. Marta continued, challenging her enemies. To all those who think they can intimidate us, I say this: we will not stop. We will continue fighting for justice and for the truth. We will not be silenced. Meanwhile, in a darker corner of the city, Ricardo, now in custody, felt defeated but not completely vanquished. He knew there were still those who shared his hatred for Marta and Don Ramon. From his cell, he began to devise a new plan, contacting old allies to continue his revenge. At the mansion, after the press conference, Marta and Don Ramon met with their security team and lawyers. They knew they had to take additional measures to protect themselves. "We can't allow this to happen again," Marta said, her determination palpable. "We need to strengthen our security and stay one step ahead of our enemies," Miguel, the head of the security team, nodded. "We are increasing surveillance and ensuring that every move Ricardo and his associates make is monitored. We will leave nothing to chance." Luisa, still recovering from the trauma, approached her mother. "Mom, do you think this will ever end?" Marta hugged her, feeling her daughter's fragility and strength. "We will get through this, Luisa. I don't know when it will end, but I promise I will always be here to protect you." That night, the family tried to return to normalcy, though they knew the shadow of their enemies still hung over them. Marta sat by Luisa's bed until she fell asleep, her thoughts swirling around the next steps to take. The atmosphere in the mansion was tense, but there was a renewed sense of resolve in the air. Marta knew the battle was not over and that challenges would continue to come, but she also knew that, together, as a family, they could face anything. As Marta and her family tried to regain a semblance of normalcy, an unexpected and devastating piece of news shook their foundations. Laura, due to a legal technicality and the influence of powerful allies, had been released from prison. The news hit like a lightning bolt to Don Ramon's mansion, generating a mix of shock, fear, and anger. Marta, Don Ramon, and Luisa were gathered in the living room when Don Ramon's phone rang. As he answered, his expression changed dramatically, reflecting a mix of disbelief and concern. "How could Laura be released?" exclaimed Don Ramon, his voice trembling with fury. "That's impossible." Marta felt a knot in her stomach upon hearing those words. They immediately turned on the television and saw Laura leaving the prison, surrounded by journalists and smiling with an air of triumph. "This can't be happening," Marta murmured, feeling as if her world was collapsing once again. Laura wasted no time. With a cold and calculated determination, she began to execute a meticulously designed plan while in prison. She knew her freedom was her last chance to destroy Marta and Don Ramon. She contacted her network and began coordinating strategic moves to attack from multiple fronts. At Don Ramon's mansion, security was reinforced, but the fear was palpable. They knew Laura was capable of anything. That night, while everyone tried to sleep, Marta received a call on her mobile. "Hello," Marta answered, her voice reflecting exhaustion. "Hello," Marta, Laura's voice, full of venom, surprised Marta. "Surprised to hear from me? I just wanted to tell you that this isn't over. It's just beginning. Enjoy every moment of peace you have left." Marta felt a shiver run down her spine. She hung up the phone and ran to the living room, where Don Ramon and Luisa were awake, alerted by the movements of security. "It was Laura. She called to threaten me," said Marta, her voice trembling with contained anger. Don Ramon frowned, his mind working at full speed. "We can't let her intimidate us. We need to stay one step ahead. Let's call a meeting with our entire security team and our lawyers. This time we won't leave any loose ends." Laura, meanwhile, began to execute her plan with precision. Using her network of contacts and hidden financial resources, she orchestrated a series of attacks on Don Ramon's company and Marta's foundation. Leaks to the press, internal sabotage, and veiled threats began to undermine the stability of both institutions. One morning, while Marta and Don Ramon reviewed the latest damage caused by Laura, Miguel, the head of security, entered with a grave expression. "We have information that Laura is planning something big. We don't have all the details, but we know she is gathering dangerous people," Miguel reported. Marta, determined not to be intimidated, responded, "We need to protect not only our family but also our employees and everyone who depends on us." we will take more drastic measures." Meanwhile, in her hideout, Laura watched with satisfaction as her plans began to bear fruit. She knew psychological warfare was as effective as any other attack, but she also knew she needed a final blow, something that would completely destroy Marta and Don Ramon. That night, Marta could barely sleep. The weight of responsibility and the fear for her family were overwhelming, but in the darkness, she found a spark of determination. She knew she couldn't let Laura win. The fight was far from over, but they were prepared to face whatever was necessary. Laura's release had sounded an alarm at Don Ramon's mansion. Marta and Don Ramon knew they were facing a shrewd and vengeful mind. Security measures were doubled, and everyone in the family was on high alert. Meanwhile, Laura was gathering her network of allies, each more dangerous than the last. One afternoon, while Marta was meticulously reviewing the latest security reports, her phone rang with an urgency that sent a chill down her spine. It was Miguel, his voice tense and grave. "Mrs. Marta, we've just received critical intelligence. Laura has hired a group of mercenaries to launch a direct assault. We need to prepare for the worst." Marta's heart pounded in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "Do whatever is necessary, Miguel. We cannot afford to be caught off guard." As night fell, the tension within the mansion was palpable. Guards patrolled every inch of the grounds, and every family member was on high alert, prepared for whatever might come. The stillness of the night was shattered around midnight by a deafening explosion that shook the mansion to its very foundation, followed by the terrifying sound of gunfire and screams. "They're here," Miguel shouted as he quickly rallied the guards to repel the vicious attack. Marta and Don Ramon raced to the basement, where Luisa and the other family members had taken refuge. The air was thick with panic, but Marta kept her composure, pulling Luisa close and whispering words of comfort. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're safe here," she assured her daughter, holding her tightly as her mind raced to formulate the next step. Outside, the mercenaries advanced with ruthless efficiency, facing fierce resistance from the mansion's security forces. From a safe distance, Laura watched the carnage unfold, a cold smile playing on her lips, confident that her plan would finally bring about the downfall of her enemies. Don Ramon, armed and resolute, joined Miguel and the guards in the desperate defense of the mansion. Despite his age, his spirit was unyielding, and his courage was unmatched. The battle raged on, brutal and relentless, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The mercenaries, well-trained and heavily armed, pressed their attack with merciless precision. Amidst the chaos, Marta realized that they couldn't hold out much longer. She made a swift and bold decision. "We can't stay here, Ramon. We need to get Luisa and the others out of the mansion. There's an escape tunnel in the basement that will lead us to safety." Don Ramon, recognizing the wisdom in her plan, nodded. "Take Luisa and the others. Miguel and I will stay here to hold them off." Without hesitation, Marta led Luisa and the other family members toward the escape tunnel, a hidden passage that Don Ramon had discreetly constructed years ago for just such an emergency. The tunnel was dark and narrow, its oppressive walls heightening their fear, but it offered a path to freedom. The sounds of battle echoed ominously above them as they hurried through the tunnel, each step filled with dread. Luisa clung to her mother, her small hands trembling, but Marta's calm presence gave her the strength to keep moving. "Everything will be okay, Luisa. Just keep going," Marta whispered, her voice as steady as she could manage. When they finally reached the end of the tunnel, they found a concealed exit that led into the dense cover of a nearby forest. Marta quickly helped everyone out, ensuring no one was left behind. Once outside, they gathered in a dark clearing, panting from exertion and trying to catch their breath. They were safe for the moment, but the terror of the night still loomed over them, and they knew they had to plan their next move carefully. Back at the mansion, Don Ramon and Miguel continued to fight valiantly, but the odds were heavily stacked against them. The mercenaries, with their superior numbers and firepower, were closing in, Miguel, recognizing the futility of holding their ground any longer, shouted to Don Ramon over the roar of the battle, "We have to retreat. We can't hold this position much longer." Don Ramon, his face streaked with sweat and determination, nodded in agreement. "You're right, Miguel. Let's fall back and regroup with the others. We can't let Laura have her way." With a grim resolve, both men began a strategic retreat, using their intimate knowledge of the terrain to evade the relentless mercenaries. Their hearts pounded as they navigated through the forest, each step driven by the urgent need to reunite with Marta and the others who anxiously awaited their return. In the dark, secluded clearing deep within the forest, Marta, Luisa, and the rest of the family stood on edge, straining to hear any sound that might indicate the arrival of Don Ramon and Miguel. The distant echoes of battle had faded, leaving only a heavy, foreboding silence that pressed down on them like a weight. Suddenly, Marta's sharp eyes caught sight of two figures emerging from the shadows of the trees. Relief washed over her like a wave as she recognized Don Ramon and Miguel, battered and weary but alive. "Dad," Marta cried out, rushing forward and wrapping her arms around Don Ramon in a fierce embrace. "We're okay, Marta. We're all okay," Don Ramon reassured her, his voice thick with emotion, the relief evident in his exhausted expression. Luisa quickly joined the embrace, clinging to her mother and grandfather, a spark of hope rekindling in her heart amidst the night's terror. Together they stood in the clearing, the weight of the night's horrors beginning to lift, knowing that although the battle was far from over, they had survived the worst of it together. Luisa quickly joined the embrace, feeling a flicker of hope ignite in her heart, despite the chaos that had engulfed their lives. Miguel, although injured, remained steadfast, his resolve to protect them unwavering. As they gathered in the shadowy forest, Marta, Don Ramon, and Miguel huddled together to plan their next move. They all understood that running was no longer an option. The time had come to confront Laura and her mercenaries directly, to put an end to the nightmare once and for all. "We need to dismantle Laura's network from the inside," Miguel suggested, his voice filled with fierce determination. "I have contacts who can help us track down her allies and neutralize them before they can regroup." Marta nodded, her eyes cold with resolve. "We must act swiftly. We can't allow her to continue spreading this reign of terror." Don Ramon, though exhausted, agreed wholeheartedly. "We're in this together. We will end this nightmare, no matter the cost." With Miguel's insider knowledge and connections, Marta, Don Ramon, and their dedicated security team began the perilous task of infiltrating Laura's heavily guarded hideout. The place was a veritable fortress, but their determination was unyielding. Through a series of well-coordinated, precise maneuvers, they took down the guards one by one, inching closer to the heart of the operation. Finally, they confronted Laura, who awaited them with a smug, triumphant grin. "Did you really think you could stop me?" Laura sneered, her voice laced with arrogance as she pointed an accusatory finger at Marta. But before Laura could act, Luisa, drawing upon a courage she didn't know she possessed, stepped between her mother and the woman who had caused them so much pain. "Enough, Laura. We won't let you destroy our family," Luisa declared, her voice steady and strong. The distraction was all Miguel needed. In a swift, decisive move, he disarmed Laura and pinned her to the ground. Marta approached, her gaze fixed on Laura, filled with both determination and an unexpected hint of compassion. "This ends now, Laura. We won't let you hurt us any longer," Marta said firmly, her words reverberating in the tense silence. Laura was promptly handed over to the authorities, and this time, there were no loopholes, no powerful allies to save her. She was imprisoned for her crimes, and a fragile but precious peace began to return to Marta and her family's lives. Back at Don Ramon's mansion, the family gathered to reflect on the harrowing ordeal they had survived and the formidable challenges they had overcome. "We've been through so much, but we faced it together," Don Ramon said, his voice brimming with pride. "There's nothing we can't conquer as a family." Marta, her eyes brimming with love as she looked at Louisa, felt a deep sense of gratitude. The most important thing is that we're together and safe. Nothing in this world is more valuable. A few months later, a grand family reunion was held at Don Ramon's mansion. The foundation had not only recovered but was flourishing once again, and the company had been restored to its former stability. Marta and Don Ramon continued to work side by side, guided by the hard-earned wisdom and determination they had forged through their struggles. Louisa, now stronger and more confident, continued her studies while actively participating in the foundation, inspired by the strength and resilience of her mother. "Today we celebrate not only our victory but the strength of our family," Marta said in an emotional speech at the reunion. "Together we've proven that love and justice will always prevail." The family, united and stronger than ever, raised their glasses in a heartfelt toast to the future. Despite the arduous journey they had endured, they had emerged victorious, more bonded and resilient than ever before. Don Ramon's mansion, once merely a symbol of wealth and power, had transformed into a beacon of hope and resilience, a place where each family member contributed to building a better, brighter future. In the sun-dappled garden of the mansion, Marta, Don Ramon, and Louisa sat together, savoring a rare moment of tranquility. The scars from their battles were deep, but so too was their love and determination. "We faced darkness and emerged stronger," Marta said, gently squeezing Louisa's hand. "Now, it's time to live fully and in peace." Louisa, her eyes shining with admiration and love, looked up at her mother and smiled. "Thank you for never giving up, Mom. You're my hero." Don Ramon, his eyes misty with tears of pride, added, "We are a family, and we always will be. Together, there's nothing we can't overcome." As we reflect on the incredible journey of Marta, Louisa, and Don Ramon, we are reminded of the strength and resilience that lies within each of us. Their story is a testament to the power of love, justice, and unwavering determination in the face of overwhelming adversity. What have you learned from their story? What is one thing you will take from this story and bring into your own life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.